Are you an adventurer looking to take your hunt to the next level? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the East Meets West Hunt podcast presented by onX. The onX Hunt app is your premier GPS mobile app, turns your smartphone into a mobile GPS. So one of the new features that onX has out is their actual 3D Maps beta. So right now this is only available with iOS and web map. Android is coming soon. But with that 3D Maps, planning and scouting from home gets you as close as possible to actually being on the ground. So you can quickly locate those hidden benches in the elk woods or that secondary ridge that would make the perfect spot for a whitetail stand. It's up to you on how you'll use the 3D maps, but it is pretty cool to be able to see that, plan your routes, to be able to say if you're putting a stalk on to figure out how to get through and navigate the terrain, just makes it that much easier. So if you head over to onxmaps.com and use the coupon code EMW, you'll save yourself 20% off of the onX Hunt app. And the University of Elk Hunting, so Corey Jacobson and Elk 101 have put together the most fully comprehensive elk hunting learning course available. So through a ton of different modules, you go through from beginning to end, from the planning phases all the way through your hunt. And not only do you get all this information all in one place, but you're also able to get discounts from the Elk 101 store, so you can get all of your elk hunting gear as well as all of the Elk 101 partners. So all that's available if you head over to elk101.com, and if you sign up, use the coupon code eastmeetswest, you'll save yourself 20% off an 1-year membership. And last but not least, Tethered. So Tethered is innovating in the mobile hunting lightweight gear market, and specifically to saddle hunting. And they've been changing the game now for a few years by just continuing just to push levels with lightweight, safe mobile hunting equipment. And so far this year, I've hunted exclusively out of a saddle. I haven't climbed in a hang-on tree stand or a climber to this date, and I don't even think of it anymore. I'm sure that there'll be setups where, that a hang-on might make more sense, but up to this point, I've been able to run my saddle this entire time, and I've really, really enjoyed it. And so actually, that'll transition into, but if you want to go check out Tethered stuff, head over to tetherednation.com. And also, as we're on the topic with saddles here, most of what's been going on up to the whitetail season to this point, we'll discuss in this podcast as we just recorded it. But I did have an update since we recorded this yesterday. I went out was hunting with Justin Mueller, who's filming for a upcoming Mountain Bucks film, hopefully, and we were hunting today. We were hunting this old clear cut, and I knew there was some buck bedding on this point, and then there was also some doe bedding scattered kind of throughout. It just felt like the right transition area. Really is kind of on a whim, and there's not really any great trails that go through it there or anything. Everything just kind of made sense, and there's some hunting pressure on the top and also some hunting pressure in the bottom. So this kind of sad hill spot just made sense to try to go after these big bucks that I've been trying to focus on. But anyways, we were in the stand this morning and had a deer come in while it was still dark out. We'd set up in the dark, and we're in plenty early, and a deer came in about, I don't know, probably 10 or 15 yards. You could hear it right there, but couldn't see it. And just kind of hung around for a while, and then eventually went off and kind of went up towards that point where they bed, and didn't hear anything else. And then about an hour and a half later, after it was light, heard some more rustling going on over there and saw a body of a deer, but it was too thick to see what it was, and it sounded like it bedded back down again. Well, about 9 o'clock, I had heard what sounded like a deer coming running in, and so got ready. Justin gives me a wave, and he's like, it's a coyote. And it comes right in, basically heads right towards my tree, and then off to my weak side of my saddle. So if you use the saddle, if you're a right-handed shooter, the right side of the tree is the hardest to shoot off of. And that coyote came in right over there. I was able to get my bow up and around the tree, get in a position off to that weak side, draw back, and the coyote stopped. And I'm in such thick stuff. There's no shooting lanes, really. You have to be pretty close. But so I hit so I had been using that Garmin sight, and I was able to get the exact range on it, which is 21 yards. Came up instantly and squeezed off a shot, and I knew it just felt good. Looked like it went right behind the shoulder. The coyote took off and watched it run for about 80 yards up towards where that deer was bedding. So it's kind of going back and forth in my mind of whether I should have shot that or not, during the peak of the rut. But I'd never shot a coyote before, and also just there's so many of them in this area I've been hunting. Almost every time I get out of the tree, surrounded by them or hear them within a few hundred yards, and so I got the opportunity and I took it. And then Justin got it all on film. We reviewed the footage, and yeah, it looked like a perfect shot, but he ran quite a ways and went right up where those deer were bedded. Well, I said, all right, we'll let it, we'll go look for it in a few hours. We're going to hunt till noon, which is like getting up into the 70s at that point and really warm. And all of a sudden, see a couple deer coming. One looked like a bigger body than the other coming through the cut from where they were bedded there. And ended up being two small bucks chasing each other, which was kind of weird. But they came down right past the stand at 20 yards, same spot I shot the coyote out of, and just kind of cruising down through. So they were bedded there the whole time. That coyote was shot, wounded, ran right through the middle of them, and they just laid there and didn't move until a little bit later, and then they came out. But so I went to go look for the coyote, and there was not really any blood, which, they're not going to bleed like a deer or anything would. But I knew it was a good shot. You could tell on the footage my arrow was covered in blood. And so I just kind of walked the direction that it went and did a little body search and a clear cut. And, of course, he died right in the buck's bedroom, right next to all these big rubs and a big bed and everything. He died right there. So that was great. But I shot this big male, nice looking male coyote, and just really, really excited about that. So anyways, built the confidence up, made a good shot on that, and looking forward to the rest of the week here. But you can hear about the few days up to this point and everything with my cousin Maven Optics and his giant old mountain buck that he just shot here on this episode. So I hope everyone enjoys it and hope you're having a good rut. All right, we're live. Welcome back to another episode of the East Meets West Hunt podcast, and I'm joined here at the round table in my house by Justin Mueller and Maven Optics. What's up, guys?
What's up?
What's going on?
It's a rut, and we're doing some hunting here. Justin's here for the entire week. We just only hunted one day so far, and going into a full week here, and the Mason's been, did you even start your vacation really yet?
Yesterday would have been the first day of my vacation, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And, so we'll talk about that in a minute, but Mason got a little head start on all of us here, but, and so we're just trying to catch up, I guess. Once again, Mason's putting the bar pretty high as we start going in there. But before we get into his story there, so Justin and I have been, like I said, just going out here for a day, which I've been hunting before that here in PA, and I keep telling him that I've been holding off on shooting a deer just because I wanted him to be here to film it, which
is not the case.
Which may not be the case, but it is what it is. It's funny, Mason and I always talk about this, we put stress on ourselves about getting it done and filling our tags, and then then once you're done, you're like, oh, I want to keep going,
Right. Yeah.
So I'm not trying to rush the process. It'll happen. We'll have some encounters going forward. Saturday was slow, but we saw some bucks moving.
Yeah, we saw that one I don't even remember what time it was, probably 8:30, 9 o'clock, that snuck up behind us through that thicket there. We could just hear it walking.
Yep.
And it walked to within, I mean, we didn't see it at that point, but it was probably within 15 yards of us.
Yeah.
Probably. And then it just kind of skirted right around and it came out on the backside of that little thicket there. We got some film with it, but then, that afternoon then when we relocated a little bit midday, we also had that buck come cruise in, and that one was pretty much played perfectly. Had it been the right buck, it'd have been right on top of us, right at that scrape.
Yeah.
It'd have been good.
Yeah, we moved spots. We got into so started kind of on the outside of this clear cut and then moved into the interior where it's an old, probably 15, 20-year-old cut, and it's thick as hell. I mean, the trees are, there's not much undergrowth, but just like the trees itself are thick, and shooting lanes are minimal. We don't have very
to
much.
say the least.
Yeah, so I'm shooting 10 yards, so something comes in, it's going to be close, in your face type stuff. But had some intel that makes me think that we'll be doing that. We were in a good spot, I guess.
Yeah, I was a little skeptical with the range that we only had. To be honest, because it's thick. You can't just thread the needle through there. Like if it's not in your lane, you're not going to shoot it. But that buck that came cruising up, we heard it come running in, grunted it in, right? What was that, 10 yards, 15 yards?
My goal with that is like almost calling to calling is what you almost have to do to get him to that spot. There's a couple trails that run right there, but essentially relying on trying to get, playing that game. Like what Corey Jacobson always says with elk hunting, like he's just trying to hunt. Not every elk wants to be bugled in, but he's just trying to find the ones that do, and it's kind of what the situation that I'm in there is. Or we're in, you almost got to rely on them calling a little bit or coming into some calls. So
yeah, well, that one did perfectly, just not the right buck.
Yeah, and then we had another one come in right before dark, but this one was definitely a little more weary. Probably the big one we're after. Yeah. So that's what I always think when you don't see them. It's always the big one.
That's right. For sure.
You
did make a good point though, with saying that it was the big one because it kind of came downwind of us. We could hear it walking around like it was cruising, it was running through, and it just never came all the way up. And it does make you think, like, well, maybe that was just an older, smarter deer, and he was just kind of sent checking our area, didn't smell nothing, and ran out.
Yeah.
And the little one came in on a rope. But obviously we have no idea.
And so I had the decoy out, Janelle, but Janelle was facing the wrong direction for that buck. It faced good for the small one. The small one came running right towards her. Then the small one did get a little bit weirded out, but once he got to where I'd laid a bunch of scent down, as I was, we essentially built some scrapes right there. So I was walking around and it was hot out, so everything wasn't perfect. But I think if I really was trying, I could have shot that deer.
Oh yeah, if it had been a good deer, you could have shot it.
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, like 10 or 12 yards. So it was pretty close. And then, like I said, the other one came in where he couldn't see the decoy. I think he literally got to the point where he could see up to where that sound was coming from and didn't see a deer, and just
that's right. Yeah.
And I don't know, like I never heard him leave. Sometimes they're weird and can sneak off, or maybe he was still standing there when we climbed down. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either. I think we probably would have heard him leave, but if he just walked off real slow, maybe not. But
yeah, I don't know. The deer pretty crazy, but yeah, we're just kind of trusting the spots we have. The weather isn't the greatest, but you never know. It's the rut, so anything can happen. And that kind of leads into Mason, who had some success yesterday, which we're recording this on Sunday. So on Saturday was that November the 7th.
That's right. Yeah. Very fortunate to have an opportunity yesterday, and luckily I was able to capitalize. And so the story of this buck is I moved into a new area for a couple years away from where I used to previously hunt, the same area as my dad. And he's been finding sheds off of a really big 8-point in this area for 4 years in a row. And he wasn't necessarily targeting this buck. He was hunting some other bucks in the area. And he filled his tag, and I decided this year I was going to go in after that big 8. So I went in there, and I started running cameras. I kind of used the area that I knew that he was finding the sheds in as a focal point. And I started spreading cameras around looking for him, and I wasn't picking them up. I wasn't picking them up until September. I picked them up in a area way far away from where my dad would always find the sheds off of them, which was kind of I didn't quite expect. So
how far away are you talking?
Maybe a mile and a quarter.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So I kind of opened my mind up to I need to start focusing around this area now. and I was picking them up fairly consistently on camera. I was finding tons of big buck sign, and then the closer it got to October, where I'm ready to start putting some serious time in hunting and looking for him, he kind of vanished on me. And to begin with, I never had a single daylight picture of him ever. And prior to this, my dad has never gotten a picture of him. So these are the first pictures we ever had of this deer. And he's ancient. He's been here forever. And the only reason we know he exists is because my dad finds some sheds off of him. So going into October, I keep increasing my area where I'm trying to find him, and I can't find him. Ready to give up hope. And then on Saturday, actually Halloween night, I go into my afternoon stand, and he was bedded down right next to the tree I was going to climb. So then I was like, bam, right there, another piece of the puzzle. And so that next day, I started spreading out, moving cameras around, looking for him, finding some huge tracks in different areas. And I checked my camera the next week, all my cameras the next week in that area, and I started picking them up, new spots. That following Friday, I actually it would have been Thursday this past week. I jumped them. I started finding some big tracks. I was going in there, just kind of scouting again, and I was like, these tracks just happened. So I knocked an arrow. I was like, I might see this buck off the logging road. So I kept creeping down this logging road, and pretty soon I jump him with 3 or 4 doe. And I was like, oh, okay, I know he's going to be in here Saturday, because I knew I didn't have enough time after work on Friday, but I knew Saturday I was going to be somewhere in this area. So I kind of knew at this point. I finally figured out some destination spots he liked to go to, and I knew an area that had a bunch of trails. I was like, if he's going in between a couple of these destination spots, he's probably going to cross right through here. So I went down there first thing Saturday morning and did a hang and hunt. And basically, first light, there's not much of a story. He walked straight to my tree, and I knew immediately it was him. And he got to about 12 yards, facing right at me, right to my tree. And I was just going to wait for him to either go to the right or left or right of my tree, and I was going to try and shoot him when he got broadside. And he came to my left side, like 9 or 10 yards, and I waited until he started walking, and I pulled back so he didn't hear me. I stopped him, and I rushed my shot a little bit. I wish I would have taken 1 extra second. And I thought I crushed him at first, and he took off running up the hill about 100 yards away, and he seemed like he was stumbling and crashing, bouncing off some trees, and I heard a loud crash as soon as he went out of sight, and nothing. And I was like, okay, November 7th is supposed to be the best day of the year. It's frosty, everything's perfect, and I have a buck down right now at first light. I was like, this is the best thing ever. And no sooner did I get that thought out, and boom, flying back by me full speed. And there's not even a chance of a follow-up shot. He goes running right past me. I'm like, oh shit, this is freaking blew it on a 9-yard shot, because I didn't know where I hit. All confidence goes right down the drain. I'm like, son of a gun. So he runs out in front of me another 100, 125 yards, and he stops. And then I can see the exit hole on him. It's like, it doesn't look that bad, but it's not as far forward as I would have wanted. And at this point, I'm like, was he cornering to me? Was he cornering away from me? I don't know. I think I just kind of blacked out at this point. So I watched him, and he stopped, and then he kind of walked off or trotted out of sight. And I was like, I just need to give him some time, because I didn't have enough information at this point. So I went and found last blood, and I backed out. I waited for some of my family to get out of the woods. My Uncle Mike also shot a buck that morning, so I went and helped him drag his out, which it was a nice break. Otherwise, I'd be sitting at my house throwing myself a pity party, going crazy.
Yeah.
So
waiting around.
Yeah, so it was really, really good. I had something to do in the meantime, and went back in there midday, and we found him within 40 yards where I saw him last. It was thinking a one lung liver shot.
Yeah. Okay. And it was funny when you were texting Michael and myself, and you're like, I blew it. He's getting down, and literally we just went hard on him. We said, it's time for you. I said, it's time for you to quit being a bitch and grow a set, and you gotta take
That's
this
right.
on. Like, it's time you can't be soft. It's like, you can't be soft. You're gonna find this deer. You just told me it's dead. You just gotta give it some time. And you're like, well, it's getting warm out, and I obviously it could have been dead right away after that,
right?
Or it might not have. So I think you waiting was the right decision, for that. I've made enough questionable shots to know that waiting's usually the better route.
Yeah, and it was almost surreal once we found him. Like this deer was almost a legend to us because we'd find its sheds, but we would never ever see him. We would never get a trail camera picture. We didn't know anyone that would have trail camera pictures of him, and all of a sudden we have him.
So going back to that, like the area like you found the sheds in, and then you started kind of expanding out looking. Is that what you tried to do? Okay, started there, wasn't getting them, so you started looking around, and in September you located them in this other spot. And when you did that, like, were you doing that with cameras, or was it more by sign, like you seeing stuff that made me think that maybe this deer is over here?
Well, it starts with sign, right? So you find the sign, and that's like a starting point to put your cameras down. Because really, I'm not to a point now where I can tell this rub was made by a big buck, or this rub was made by a little buck, or this scrape was made by a big buck versus a little buck. But sometimes you get a little buck with big feet, and the buck I shot last year was a 5.5-year-old deer, and the feet on it were pretty small. So it's like you see the tracks in the scrape. It's like, how do you really know how big of a buck this was, or what buck it was? So I've found a bunch of signs in some different areas and threw some cameras up, and that's eventually how I picked him up.
Okay. So and then you're like, okay, he's kind of in there. And then when you said you went in and jumped him, when was that, Halloween? Yep. In his bed, like what did that look like? Why do you have any idea why he would bed right there, or did you think that was a spot that he could potentially bed?
I thought it was a spot that he could potentially be in, but I wasn't fully expecting it either, because I had that spot surrounded with cameras, and he was never on a single one of them. So he must have had a trail he liked to go in and out of there that wasn't one I had my cameras on, right? So
yeah,
it just goes to show you how much you miss. You can't fully rely on your cameras. They only tell you such a small piece of what's actually happening there. And basically where he was bedded up, it was on like a miniature point, and he just had a little bit of a view down onto the bench below him, and that's where he was hanging out at
just
that day.
Big timber type stuff? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. That is interesting too. Actually, Justin and I were talking about that today. So we had checked 3 cameras, and the one had this really big buck on. He was coming off of the hill up above, and this was in a creek bottom. I had 2 cameras directly above on some giant rubs that I had scraped next to this giant rub line, and everything that made sense for this buck, that the fact that he was 400 yards down over the hill, why he wouldn't be up at these spots. I literally got no pictures of him on those top ones. If I only had those 2 cameras, I wouldn't even know about this buck,
Right.
Or think something. And so he could be, like you said, he could be within 50 yards of my camera all the time. It's just not on the trail that I'm using with. And so you kind of got to go with reading the sign and woodsmanship a little bit too, and I'm real guilty of sometimes just relying on cameras so much to get as far as like my attitude.
For sure.
Well, and really your cameras are telling you past stuff. It's not going to tell you what's going to be going forward. You kind of got to use some, there's some stuff you can learn from, but like unless it's within a day or two, things are constantly changing.
Right.
Which is, difficult to grasp sometimes.
Yeah, especially because, like you just said, those cameras that we checked, they've been out for months.
Yeah.
So it's not like he didn't show up at one, but he did the other in the last week. It's been several months.
Oh, yeah.
He's never
Since
been
late
on this
September.
one. 150 or 200 yards down the way.
Yeah.
He's on that one a couple times. So it makes you wonder,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So so it's crazy. Like, you said you had your camera circled around that area and everything. And what made you want to put a stand there? Just you thought that maybe he'd be running around that point? Just kind of assumption?
Yeah, kind of just a terrain feature that I thought was interesting. Like I said, it seems like the last 2 or 3 years when I'm trying to get on a good buck, I start thinking of, if I was a buck, where would I want to be, and why would I want to be there? So I call them destination spots. Like this point has a nice clear cut where I see does all the time. There's an apple tree over here, or goldenrods where does like to bed down in, and it's like if I was going from one destination to another, where am I going to walk? Am I going to walk on this bench? Am I going to walk along this creek? along a ridge line, and then I try and set up accordingly. And lots of times you set up and it's a swing and a miss, but you also have to wonder, was he even on this mountain this day, or was he down the valley a mile too?
Yeah.
Especially this time of year. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't, and that's the hardest part is like knowing, like, okay, was this actually a complete bust, or was he just doing something different this day, and I need to give it 3 days, to figure out.
And as far as maybe it's different for you guys, but I've never once had a buck that's using the same trail every day or shows up on even a scrape, say 4 or 5 times in a week. They're very inconsistent in this area, and it's like lots of times I'll see good bucks and they're not even walking on trails; they're just meandering wherever they feel like it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree any more with that. Like you're not really patterned. You're trying to put yourself in the best situation. I think you and I were talking about this today. Where it was like, I said, I never have a spot where a buck's just like, okay, every evening he's coming through here,
right?
At this time or doing that. And it's just like not even close. They're so sporadic. I do try to take that data, and I personally put in an Excel spreadsheet, and I'll look at like what the weather and the wind direction was, just to try to correlate something, that maybe when these conditions line up again, they'll give you a 10% better chance than other times, or whatever, it might be. So try to look at those different situations there. But
yeah, and they're, like I said, they're so unpredictable. Like yesterday morning when I killed, in theory, that buck should not have been walking to me, because he was walking with the wind dead at his back, straight to me. And I was thinking, I couldn't have drawn this up any better. The wind's right in my face. I have this huge cherry right to my back. He's not going to pick my silhouette out. And he came right to my tree with the wind at his back. It's like, how often you hear big bucks doing that?
Yeah, never.
Yeah, it was absolutely perfect.
Yeah, that is crazy. But at the same time, though, I've seen bucks like walk with the wind at their back before. I don't think they're always.
Yeah.
Maybe you're just in an area that he felt safe,
so comfortable being there,
or he had good vision, ahead where. I don't know, but what was this set up in the same spot you jumped him in before? Were you in the same tree?
About 200 yards away.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
So you just
and
adjusted a little bit.
He's actually heading back to that miniature point. So and the fact that we never had daylight pictures of him, I was wondering too if usually, and there's actually does. I ended up finding out there was does where he came from. So it's like, did he decide, okay, it's time to stop messing around with these does? It's getting light out. There's going to be hunters. I need to get back to my bedding spot. I don't know if that was the case or not.
Yeah.
But the fact that exactly where he came from, multiple does came from, and then there's another buck chasing a doe back there too. It's like, why would he leave that spot?
Yeah, that is kind of interesting. Unless he was just out all night taking care of the women, and he just needed to rest down for a little bit before he went back in.
Yeah,
things to do.
Quick nap, recovery.
You catch him going back to like 9 a.m.
Drink a rock star and head out.
Yeah.
It's a quick side story. Remember Johnny Stewart last night saying that? He's like talking about when he opens his rock star to get him in the mood while he's hunting and he's tired. Yeah. This is loud click. He's like, the deer they don't know what that sound is. And he goes, if they did, they'd come in because they want some rock star.
That's funny.
I was cracking up. But anyway, so back to that story there. I just think I thought it was so fascinating. So the story behind this deer, I mean, he hasn't scored it or anything yet, but just to give you guys a reference to kind of what it looks like. And if you head over on social media, I'll have it as the cover art for this and stuff to be able to see this photo. But it's basically, I don't know, somewhere in the mid 140s to 150 inch, maybe even bigger 8-point.
Right.
Just a straight, one of the biggest 8-points I've ever seen.
Yeah, he's just an ancient old buck. It's based on all the sheds we have, we're figuring he's either 7 or 8 years old, and in an area like this, and it's a very heavily hunted area too. So he had good hiding spots, is all I can say.
Yeah,
and it's cool because his main beams have that real big curl in it, so you'd know that those are his sheds.
Oh yeah,
it's very easy to see.
You can, because at 1 year he was actually a 10-point, and then he went back to an 8. But there's absolutely zero mistaking the way that. I think
super unique beams on it.
If you'd put G2s where there's almost like there's a spot missing from where there should be another set of G2 to make him a 10-point, and I mean that deer's we were saying probably 165 inches all day, if that was the case. That's just to give you an idea how big the frame is. And I think what's even more impressive than the rack was the body.
Oh, yeah. He was beefy.
Oh,
he's a beefcake buck.
Oh, yeah. Like, when I looked at him, I just pictured a bull. Like, I pictured a bully buck. Like, one that goes around and just destroys everybody else. His neck was big. Like you say, he didn't skip neck day. Like, he was always doing shrugs. And he was just going in there, like, just, I don't know. When you look at, like, the boss buck of, Big Woods mountain buck, that's what I think of. Like, that's the ideal picture for one, I guess.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just everything about that. But Mason started showing me this buck, back, I think it was in September after I got back from Alaska, and you're like, this buck is like really big. You're like, I think this is like 150-inch 8-point, and I was looking at it, and it was hard. It's tough to tell on trail cameras, but I hadn't seen the sheds at that point.
Especially nighttime pictures too, are especially difficult.
They almost make them seem smaller on some, and it was difficult. And I was just like, oh, definitely looks like a big deer, and if you had the sheds, then you would know. But it was just, then once you see it in person, it's just like, holy cow, like, you couldn't tell from the trail cameras he was that big. Well, you could, but I wasn't seeing it at first. And then you see him in person, it's like, damn.
Right.
But that was your buck that you wanted to kill. You talked about it from the beginning to me. You're like, I want this 8-point. I'm going to hunt this 8-point. And you passed on a nice 10-point a couple weeks ago, didn't you?
Yep. And I saw him at first, and immediately I knew it was a good buck, but it wasn't what I wanted. And I had thoughts where I was like, I need to get out of this tree and go to my truck before I shoot this deer. Sure enough, he came right to my tree and taunted me too. I can't believe I didn't at least shoot at him.
Yeah, he was what, 125-inch 10-point. I mean,
yeah, probably close to it.
Yeah, that takes some discipline to hold back on that.
Oh yeah. And the same area, there's 4-year-old deer that are year after year. The 4-year-olds are only hitting like 120 inches.
Yeah.
So it's not like an area that's known for big bucks either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is difficult to find ones like that, and the genetics of that buck that you had. I wonder, but no, he's been pretty big framed for years.
Yeah, he hasn't grown a whole lot, but I would say that this year probably is his biggest rack that he's had.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. We were looking at the sheds, your brother and I, and the last 2 years, it's kind of hard to tell which one is like the older of the two. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like,
you figured he's how old? Like 8?
Yeah, either 7 or 8.
So let's just say he's 7. Between year 5 and 6, you can tell there's a little more mass on one, but that rack, besides having that 10, looks pretty similar. And he's bigger than that this year.
Yeah. And actually, right before I came here, I took the bottom jaw off, and I've never seen a buck that any of us have shot in the family that had the teeth worn down like this. I know you shot a really big 9-point quite a few years ago. That I'm pretty sure that was an old buck. I didn't see that bottom jaw, but I'm really anxious to send the teeth in to get this buck aged.
Are you gonna send it in to get to like actually like cutting and like out in Montana or wherever you send it into that lab, or are you trying to just get it looked at?
I don't really know yet. I was going to get some opinions.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about this offline, but essentially, my thought would be is to send it into one of those labs. I guess that'd be the only thing they'd be looking at, because otherwise, your dad's obviously a taxidermist, so he can kind of get a look at it roughly. But I've heard so many mixed reviews by looking at the teeth, but depending on what they eat and stuff, where sending into those labs is pretty accurate. I can't remember how much it costs, but I think it'd be worth it for you to do that and just see, he's going to come back like 2.5-year-old. Mason was wrong, not the sheds.
He's off by 6 years.
Wrong buck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Who knows? Maybe he's even older than that.
But it felt like looking for Sasquatch almost. I was like, my dad's been in this area for years, and we've never picked him up on, not that he runs a lot of cameras, but he's in there. And it's like he's never been seen and never had a trail camera picture. And I'm looking for him. And for a while, I wasn't picking him up. And it's like, I'm just wasting my time in here. And to finally figure him out and get lucky, I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. And is this the first buck that you've like picked out and wanted to kill that it worked out?
Halfway. I would say yes for the most part, yes. Last year, I didn't really have this mentality, and then I shot and I shaved the back of that buck I got last year, and for 2 weeks is kind of my mission to get that buck. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of halfway. I was targeting that buck, and I think I would have shot another buck if I got the opportunity at the right one, but it just so happened that I got to redeem myself, and it felt good.
Yeah. So this is 3 years in a row of you essentially shooting a buck in Pennsylvania over 140 inches. We were joking with you, like before this season, like, man, there's no way you're going to top these last 2 years. Like, no, it worked out.
Yeah. And it's, I'm not doing anything special either. I'm just putting in a little bit of work and mostly getting lucky. It's been very fortunate.
Yeah. It's one of them things that, as Johnny Stewart says, he doesn't believe in luck, but obviously there's a little bit of luck that comes to it, but you put yourself in the right positions for luck to help you out a little bit,
Right.
Luck might have helped you that, the wind stayed true for that point or whatever else it might be, but you put yourself in those areas, which is pretty awesome in its own, I'd say. Just having opportunities and then being able to capitalize on it, and like last year when you shot that big deer and you shaved it off its back. It just takes tough to even get yourself back in the game to want to go do that. I know what that's like.
Oh yeah, that 2 weeks last year between the time I missed him or shaved his back and the time I got him I was in some dark places. I was like a recluse. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I was fighting with my girlfriend all the time. It almost didn't work out. I think she was more happy I got to redeem myself than I was.
That's really funny. Yeah, I remember that. And we just sent you that meme the other day, or Michael sent it to you, of this guy. It looked like he was all cracked out, laying on the couch. It was like what you look like after missing the buck of your lifetime or whatever it was. It was hilarious.
Oh, I was there.
Just completely down.
Yeah. Down
and out. That's funny. But yeah, it ended up working out for you, and that's pretty awesome. It's like I said, it's people that hunt around here get it, but like the significance of doing that consistently year after year in an area that's tough like this is something else, especially like I said in those high pressured areas. I mean, you're not the only one hunting deer,
Oh yeah.
So, and so when you're going into, because like I know what your spot looked like that you killed the last two in versus this one's is drastically different. Do you have like a rule of thumb that you go in looking at places, or is it just all situational what you're looking at? Like, do you have like certain features that like just jump out at you like when you're looking at places, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. I think I know what you're saying, and I don't particularly have any features that stick out to me other than basically I'll pick an area out and I'll find some difference in terrain or vegetation or a clear cut or a river bottom or where's some terrain feature that just looks interesting to me, and after that I just got to put boots on the ground and see what it looks like. And I do a lot of this in between January and March, actually.
Yeah. And actually, I mean, this year was we joke about it a lot, but like the first year you ran cameras in the summer.
Yeah.
So like you did all your homework in the spring, found and got prepared then, and then went out and started hunting, in the fall. I mean, I know there was other work you did in the meantime, but like
right.
As far as you weren't running cameras all year for it or anything, you learned your intel and, could tell that they were doing this year after year or whatever and went through it. So I think that's a pretty interesting
and
point too.
I mean, getting a couple nice bucks, it motivates you to work harder for the next year, right? So last year after I missed that one, I ended up getting them. I was like, that was really fun trying to hunt one deer, trying to figure him out. I'm sure if I didn't get him, I would have had to have a different attitude right now. I'm sure I would. But that was very satisfying because I knew how hard it would be to get another opportunity at that deer. So I wanted to kind of try and do that again this year, and it paid off for me, and it motivated me to run cameras in the summer. But I didn't pick that deer up until September, so it's not like the summer cameras helped me, but as I learned a lot for next year. I mean, there's some prospect bucks I have out there. I'm going to be trying to find their sheds and figure them out for next year.
Yeah, I think there's an aspect of picking out a deer, and whether you end up shooting that specific deer or not, but just trying to figure them out and learn it.
Yeah.
I was actually went against it for a while because I had a bad experience. I had Hercules for 4 years. I missed him the first year and then never had another opportunity again. He just disappeared, and I just was like, I couldn't figure out that deer. There's nothing, like, I had some speculations, found some sheds in bed, but I obviously never could get close enough to do it again. And so then the last few years, I was just like hunting really any good deer that I want. Like, I was hunting spots, not really specific deer, but I think you learn so much more when you're hunting a specific deer, and each one has different mannerisms, things like to do. And this year I'm hunting a specific deer that's like, it's been actually kind of really fun. It's been frustrating at times, but it's been, and I had my opportunity that I discussed last week and hoping to get another one, but it is kind of fun. You do learn a lot by doing that. And at the same time, you're learning stuff about other deer too, and you're putting yourself in good spots. So it's not like you're only focused on that one deer. But
yeah, and it's not like you want to shoot a different good buck that comes by either.
Yeah, no, definitely not. I'm
not that committed.
No, I'm not there. I'm not there either. I know what that's like, but yeah, so that's pretty awesome. And that deer just, I don't know, I just couldn't get over it yesterday when I saw it. When you texted us and said it was that big 8, I was like, oh my. And then I saw the picture of it, and he's just a horse.
Right.
Yeah, we had a fun time at camp then last night. That's why I love this type of year. I'm glad that Justin got to be there, and you'll be able to see some of it in the film. But everybody came to our camp, our family camp, and first we were over at your dad's place, and everyone was stopping in there and stuff, and then we went to the camp, and it was just like people in and out, checking it out and talking deer stories. And then Greg Litzinger and Johnny Stewart brought Greg's buck in, and we had them all there around and just talking. And I love this time of year for that.
Yeah, it's a good recipe for a good night at camp. 2 big bucks coming in,
Yeah. Besides the fact that Mason's the one who killed the big deer, but I got completely loaded, and I got way too drunk, and I heard it. I was really hurting today when we were scouting. I stopped when we were walking with Justin, and I was just like, I can't move. My head hurts so bad.
It was funny because we were hiking uphill out of that bottom, and you stopped, took a little break. I could hear you breathing just heavier and shit. And I was like, Beau's hurting. And we walked like 25 yards. And he stops again. He's got his head down in his hand like this. I was like, you okay, Beau? He's like, no, I'm not. Not okay. I got a headache.
I'm not okay. And it was 70 degrees out, so I was very dehydrated. So I was sweating more than I was drinking in at that point. It just made it worse.
Funny.
But anyways, I do love those nights, and although I don't like the next days, it's great to see everyone come together, and everyone knows how hard you worked for it, and I thought that was a cool aspect. I'm glad that you got to experience it. And
yep. Kind of reminds me back home. We kind of do similar stuff in Minnesota. Everyone has like a camp that they go to, or a farm or something, and the whole family gets together there. It's very similar to what you guys had going on.
Yeah, it's relatable.
So, yeah. Yep,
yeah,
cool.
I think there's a lot of other places that are like this. I don't think a ton, but I feel like Michigan, Wisconsin, some of those places, New York have some of those are just, from what I've heard, I haven't experienced those, but
yeah, just a good camp feel.
Yeah. I don't know what it is like I think for most places in Pennsylvania, it's around rifle season. But for like our family, there's not on either side, my mom or dad's and that when the whole family isn't off work sometime in the first 2 weeks of November, and we're always going to camp or up to your dad's place or wherever, and just like
best time of the year.
Yeah. Oh, it is. It's great sitting there telling stories, and it gets you amped up, or it could ruin you when you're getting texts that everybody else in the world is shooting bucks and you're not seeing nothing.
Oh yeah.
That is an interesting point though, that your guys' camp is around bow hunting the rut. I would say probably 95% of everywhere else, it's the gun season or the rifle season.
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty cool.
I'd say you and I are pretty lucky, like the people that we get to learn from and be around, like as far as everyone's in our family's passionate bow hunters, and that definitely helps us out a little bit.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Besides the fact that if our family was a little more open about telling about things, I think we could probably learn more.
Oh, yeah. I know our uncles and dads hold back on what they tell us for sure.
100%.
I know they do.
My own dad. Like, I know yours does.
We actually talked about that a little bit today too. It was like, because it's all public land you guys are hunting. So I was telling Beau when we were out scouting, I was like, it's just funny how like you guys will go in and help each other drag a deer out and stuff, and like,
yeah.
But like other than that, it seems pretty like y'all kind of have just your little secret spots. And like when we were joking about the gas line or the pipeline or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Never came to like, oh yeah, I was over here. She's like, oh yeah, I was up on a hill. You know?
Yeah. I'm not going to tell nobody.
Yeah.
I'm not going to move in. Stop. Actually, if you tell me, then I won't end up moving in on you by accident. Amazing you ran into that this year.
Oh, yeah. Apparently I was stepping on some people's toes this year.
Hey, you killed the buck though. So.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. I was cracking up. Uncle Mike's like, can you believe Mason moved in on me?
What were you doing that you like just happened to go upon his spot he was hunting or what?
Yeah, so I found this scrape back in March or April, and I was like, wow, I wouldn't really expect a scrape to be here, but like this is the spot. This is tore up. So come August or September, I put a camera on it. Yeah. And pretty soon my dad sends me a picture of my camera that I put on this tree like a week later, and he goes, Uncle Mike wants to know if this is my camera. Is it yours? I go, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, my Uncle Mike was like, I built that screen.
Mason shows up and puts a camera on it.
Yeah. He's like, I was getting ready to put a stand in there. I think he was hauling a stand in there, and he found your camera on it or something like that. I was cracking up so hard laughing at it. I was like, well, I guess we're thinking similar.
He came into my office that next week at work, and we work at the same place, and we had a slightly awkward conversation about it, and that was about it. The camera stands.
Yeah, and then he ended up killing a nice 10-point yesterday too.
Yep.
So
yeah, it's the second time we've doubled up on the same day.
Really?
Wow,
that's cool. That'll happen though when you hunt his spots, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and your dad tagged out in October, but it's been slow to this point for our family, like until yesterday. I mean, your dad was the only one that tagged out, and I think this week is going to be
it's going to be money.
I think it's going to be good, yeah. Especially towards the end of the week as it starts to cool down a little bit.
Yeah, it's hot now, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, you killed him first light there, and it was still pretty cold in the morning. And Justin and I were saying that because we dressed really light because we thought it was going to get hot. And it was pretty cold for a while in the morning. You know?
We were also in the shadows, too, behind those thick trees. But yeah, it was
hemlocks.
Chilly. Yeah.
Even though it's been hot during the days, the mornings, they felt good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Felt like stuff should be happening.
Yeah, definitely. The afternoons are hard to get the motivation going when you're like in a t-shirt essentially, and not sure that no one can figure out the technical term, but none of us have also Googled it. Is the beach ticks or deer fleas or chiggers or whatever you call them, the little flying tick type things that bite you like fleas?
Deer keds.
Keds. Is that the actual term for them?
I believe so. Don't quote me, but I believe so.
They suck. How about all the ones I was pulling out of me today out of the back of my hair? Did you have them on you?
Oh, yeah. I've never seen those until now.
I guess you just don't bitch. I do.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's a little bug. I just kind of flicked it off, and you make a big deal about it. But
yeah, you'll wake up and you'll have bites if you didn't have your shirt tucked in or something. I'd have them like all around.
Really?
I thought I had fleas
like around
in
like the
my house.
waistband.
Yeah,
that sounds like chiggers, but it's not. It's something, right? Something completely different. That's what chiggers do too. They go around your.
They may be all the same thing.
Yeah, I've never experienced those.
Yeah,
well, I've never experienced these, but
yeah, these things are nasty.
You can't like get them off you. Like I tried like flicking them just like a bug, and they just stay on there.
They latch on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the warm weather brings them out. They seem to be around beech trees mostly, and that's when you're in thick beech stuff. I remember looking at when we were climbing that hill my heart rate was like through the roof. I was like, here we go, big patch of thick beech brush. I'm like, I'm about to get these deer fleas or
get swarmed.
Yeah.
They weren't terrible. They were some, but they weren't.
Yeah, they weren't as bad as I expected today, but
yeah, they were definitely out there.
Still weren't. How about how warm it's been? Like, have you been seeing moths in the stand?
Yeah, actually, I had one land on me, kind of freaked me out a little bit yesterday morning.
Yeah.
When we were setting up, I had my red headlamp on, and one got underneath my glasses. A moth did, and that freaked the hell out of me. I didn't know what was going on.
I can't see.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah, so the weather's weird, but yeah, we'll make do of it. And, where we've been hunting, we're dealing with a little bit of hunting pressure and some stuff that's typical.
ATV drivers.
Yeah, some things that you don't like to deal with, but that's what happens when other people can hunt the same areas as you. So it's just is what it is, and I think where we're at now, we're not going to see anybody. We're in such thick. No one wants to be that stupid to go in there.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. I'm pretty confident though. Like I have a really good feeling that we'll have an opportunity here shortly.
Yeah.
It's funny like how much did you have confidence going into your stand yesterday?
I do pretty much every morning, but I can lose it just as fast.
You're like 8 o'clock. It's like,
Yeah, so I
I
didn't have time to lose confidence that day yesterday.
It was funny. Mason's roller coaster of emotions. But him and I both go through it. We laugh about it because he'll text me be like, in my stand, all confidence gone. It's like, I just don't feel right. It doesn't feel right.
Yeah, that's the terrible thing about our group text too, with myself, you, and our dads and uncles, and it's like two or three people are having a phenomenal morning, and you're not seeing a deer. All of a sudden, you think your stand sucks. You got to move. It's like, well, this is my best stand, I thought, going into the season, and I didn't see anything. My season's over. It's ruined. It's shot. But that's not the case. It just wasn't happening there that day. Maybe not even that half hour. A half hour later, things could be completely different.
Yep. Yeah, things can change so fast. It's like
even seconds or minutes.
Yeah, and I said it's I know this every year, but I still struggle with that. Like like get stressed out of like am I going to have this opportunity? But it seems like every year, no matter what I'm hunting or doing something, I end up having an opportunity. It's whether I capitalize or not. Yeah. But like things can change in an instant. Like our caribou hunt, that was they were all way up high and we were struggling getting at them, and then all of a sudden one morning, boom, there they were. Yep. And by the way, Mason, you're peaked, but bush lights lined up with the center of the mountains.
I'll take care of that later.
Yeah, I won't make you chug it right now. But so I've been waiting for you to open that actually.
Like 20 minutes.
It from across the
you scouted it.
That's weird you're not drinking hams.
Well, I decided since I got a buck yesterday, I could splurge and get some bush light to share with everyone else instead of hearing everyone bitch about drinking hams.
Yeah, I know. Mason's actually banned from bringing hams to my grandpa's camp because my grandpa said he hasn't ever thrown up in 75 years, and Mason left one in the fridge one day and he drank it and he threw up in his mouth.
So about right.
So I don't know. Mason's big on hams.
It's a light beer with a premium taste.
He's got shirts and everything. It's hilarious. Big ambassador for hams.
Yep.
Does Hams have an Instagram?
They used to. I don't think they're active anymore.
Really?
Maybe there's a new account. I'll have to check.
They probably just have so many people buying it, they don't need to promote it anymore.
That's right.
Yeah. Mason was tagging them too much. They just shut their account down.
That's right.
Oh, that's funny. So other than that, though, you've had a pretty solid year. You started off, I mean, it seems like a whole year ago now, but back in August, you went out on mule deer hunting, which was like, I feel like that's been your number one thing, like monkey on your back type of deal.
Oh, yeah.
Was been hunting mule deer.
Yep. So I've been going out west for a few years now and unsuccessful every year. And this year I got the monkey off my back finally. And especially mule deer. I've been obsessed with high country mule deer. I remember hearing on I don't know if it was a YouTube video or I read it in a magazine, but someone compared high country mule deer as the poor man's sheep hunt. I always thought sheep hunting was like the coolest thing. So then I started doing a bunch of research on high country mule deer. Michael Palladino and myself went on a hunt. I think it was 2016 or it would have been 2017. And he actually tagged out on a cow elk and a mule deer buck, and I was unsuccessful on that trip, but I still had a great trip. I learned a lot, and actually I haven't been on a mule deer hunt since then until this year. And I wanted to get to Colorado. I had a good amount of points. I knew the unit I wanted to go to, but I had conflicts with my work schedule, so I couldn't draw my Colorado tag. And basically, I started looking at other states to figure out what dates were going to fit my work schedule, and I ended up in Utah on a general hunt.
Yeah, and so we talked last time I had you and Michael on the podcast was right after you guys got back from New Mexico. So you went on a mule deer hunt in 2018, but it wasn't really a hunt because Michael got elevation sickness. And, well, you both did, but you were both in the hospital in like 2 days, so that didn't really count.
Actually, it was opening day.
Okay, yeah. So that didn't really count as a hunt. And then in 2019, you guys didn't draw your Colorado tags.
Right.
And so you went to Idaho elk hunting, and that was the whole thing there with our elk hunt. And yeah, then you've been, because actually you were going to go to Alaska with us, and the work schedule didn't allow for that to happen.
Right.
But at the same time, I could tell that as much as you wanted to go to Alaska, you still really, really wanted to hunt high country mule deer.
Yeah, I wasn't super bothered by I wanted to go to Alaska, but still I felt like I had all this weight on my shoulders just to get a mule deer. That's kind of what I wanted more than anything, a high country velvet mule deer. And so this year my brother just graduated from college, and he was going to be available. He just started a new job, actually, so he got into a hairy situation with his vacation, taking 2 weeks vacation after only starting there a week ago. And we took off to Utah, and we got there, I think, 2 or 3 days before the season started, and scouted. And we actually had this unit's known for an absurd amount of people, both hikers and hunters. It's not too far from a couple big cities, and the day before the season, we were seeing some good bucks, and we were actually kind of surprised by how many bucks we were seeing. And we bedded some bucks the day before the opener up in these cliffs, and a helicopter actually came down and landed 2 times within a couple hundred yards of the bucks, like right below them. And we thought for sure the bucks got up and ran over the mountain down the other side. I was like, okay, that helicopter just blew every buck out of this drainage. We got to come up with a plan B. And the helicopter left the second time, and I spent the next hour or so glassing just to make sure that the bucks were still there, or just hoping that I would get a glimpse of one of them. And sure enough, those bucks stayed bedded while that helicopter landed right below them and took off. So I don't know if they were used to that, or if they're just so scared they didn't know what else to do, so they laid down. But that gave me the confidence to know that, okay, we can stick with our game plan going into the next morning. And the next morning, even that night, the amount of hunters that came into that area, I absolutely could not believe it. And opening morning, before it got light, the mountain was lit up like a Christmas tree with all the headlamps. It was absolutely absurd.
What did that do to your confidence?
It wasn't great, I'll tell you that, because I mean, never hunting there before. You think you have a game plan, and then you see all those headlamps. It's like, what should your strategy be? I was kind of, I know I was talking to Clint Casper before I went out there. He's hunted close by before, and he kind of prepped me. He's like, dude, there's a lot of people in that unit. He's kind of suggesting just getting a pinch point and be ready for someone to scare something to you. So that was kind of my mentality going into that morning. There's some good bucks. I cruised up in there and got close by, and I was going to have my brother signal me towards where one of the bucks we were looking for was. And opening morning came, and it got light, and he said right off the bat he saw a body sprinting across the mountain, and we figured it was the buck I was in there for. So I waited a while, and I gave up on it. I started going towards my number 2 buck. I don't know, is this where you wanted to go?
Yeah,
directly
yeah,
to the podcast? Yeah. So I started heading towards my number 2 buck, my plan B for the morning, and it's all the way at the very top of the mountain. So I'm hustling up there. I'm still not fully adjusted to the altitude there. So I'm hustling up there, just wheezing and breathing. And I spot him. I spot him right as he goes up into the highest group of pine trees in the whole basin, right below the mountain peak. And I was like, okay, this is perfect. If I can get to the backside of that mountain peak, that's a dead deer all day. It should be like a 30, 40 yard shot off the top of the mountain. So I'm trying to get there as fast as I can before anyone else sees him or he gets there. And I'm like, someone else had to have seen this one. So I'm climbing up the mountain, and right before I go out of sight to go on the backside of the mountain, I decided to look for hunters because I wasn't going to see them for another 45 minutes. And I pulled my binoculars up just in time to watch another hunter pull back and shoot the buck, and it went rolling right down the mountain in front of me. It was like, at that point, I was like, how the heck can anyone even be successful in here?
Yeah.
It's like, holy cow. So that happened. I was kind of bummed out. There's a couple other hunters beside me. I started talking to them, kind of just bullshitting, wasting time, and watched some other bucks for a while, and they went up into some cliffs. Some hikers scared them down into some thick timber, and I was like, this is a freaking circus.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm going back to camp to talk to my brother, get some food, and we'll try and glass up a better buck. And sure enough, I went back to camp. I started talking to him. He wasn't seeing anything else. Ate some lunch, and I started glassing, and I glassed the other side of the drainage, and there's a buck I watched change beds. He got up and walked like 10 feet to a different tree and laid back down. And I looked at my brother. I was like, I just saw a nice buck. And for what he just did, I'm pretty sure no one else in this basin saw this buck. And I was like, as tired as I am, and I don't want to go after him, I'm going after him. So I finished my lunch up, and I ran across the drainage. I passed like another 3 or 4 hunters on my stalk. I climbed all the way to the top of the other side of the mountain, and started heading down the drainage and dropping straight down on the buck. And eventually I saw him, snuck in, and I ended up shooting him. And that experience of sneaking up on that buck and getting him, it was by far the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And I would trade every whitetail I ever shot to do that again.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That is awesome. And then the buck, he rolled like way off these cliffs?
Yeah, it was like 450 feet, I believe. He rolled down the mountain, and I'll never forget those sounds. I was like, this buck's going to look like he got hit by a semi-truck.
Yeah.
But he actually looked pretty good when I got to him.
Yeah, your velvet wasn't even really screwed up besides in a couple spots.
Yeah, not too bad.
Yeah, which is incredible that he fell that far. And I couldn't imagine the sounds that you hear, the body slamming.
Yeah, and that hunt was just another reminder. Whenever you think you're in shape for a hunt, work harder, because you're not. And you're probably never going to be in shape as much as you think you need to be. But I just remember by the time I got to that buck, I was so tired I didn't know if I was going to be able to pull my bow back. And to make it happen when you're that tired just makes it that much sweeter.
Yeah, and what I think would help too with that in that moment was you've been practicing so much with your bow and, shooting like crazy. I mean, you were sending me groups, you were shooting 70 and 80 yards like just all the time, and doing that. And we didn't actually get to shoot 3D this year like we did the year before because COVID had everything kind of wasn't really the right thing to do, I guess. And but you were just shooting every day in your yard, and you hunted with a back tension release too.
Right. Yeah.
Which that's a funny story too, listening to you talk about trying to get your shot to go off when you were shooting that mule deer.
Anyone else that's hunted with a back tension, I'm sure you can relate, but it's kind of coming from a guy that's been shooting a command trigger release his whole life. And that's exactly the reason why I got away from it, is because you can't rush your shot with a back tension. So I tried doing that this year. I was shooting real good, practicing all summer, and I pulled back on that mule deer, and I tried to make my shot go off, and I kept pulling, it wasn't going off, and I started getting anxiety, like, come on, I just wanted this bow to go off right now, and it wasn't going. But I followed through with my shot, and eventually it broke, and as soon as it broke, I knew I crushed him.
Yeah.
And that was just such an awesome feeling. Right then, I was like, huge, like all those years of hard work trying to imagine that was going to happen, is like right then in that moment I knew it was worth it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I remember when you sent me the text or call, I can't remember what it was at that time, but it was just like, I was at work in the office just like fired up, like throwing my arms around, just like it was incredible.
I lost it. Like I said, that was the hardest thing I've ever worked for.
Yeah. And then you had to pack it out.
Yeah. It wasn't necessarily the worst pack out, but I didn't condition myself enough prior to the hunt.
Yeah, and just that day in general, no matter how good a shape you're in, that's a struggle. Going all the way across the mountain up twice.
Yep.
Essentially, and then just the mental strain of everything too wears on you, I'm sure.
Yeah, and my brother, luckily he was there to help me pack out, and I remember at one point we were almost back to the truck at the trailhead, and there's a grandma and her granddaughter that passed us on the trail. My brother was like, "You gotta be kidding me! We're getting passed by a grandma on the trail." I'm doing my best.
Oh my god, that's hilarious.
But yeah,
that was first day of the
first day of the Utah general bow season.
Yeah, and you're gonna be there for 14 days or something like you normally do. That's awesome. I know that feeling. That's the same way the elk hunt went. First day, that's like let's enjoy this now.
Yeah, it is, and I was more than grateful for that, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. But the next morning, we saw, I can't remember what the guy said it scored, but it was like a 220-inch buck, and we saw it that next morning. I was like, I kind of wish I had a tag.
Yeah.
But the same day that we saw that 200+ inch buck, that a different guy shot it in that drainage, so he was dead anyways. But it was really fun too and exciting being the spotter for my brother, watching him through the spot and scope. And this unit we were hunting is so unbelievably steep. Multiple times I watched him walk right under bucks at less than 15 yards, and he couldn't see him because they're so high above him on a little shelf.
Yeah.
And it's like watching that through a spot and scope where you have my brother and a buck in the same view. It's like that's
cool.
That was such an adrenaline rush in itself.
Yeah.
And I got to see that multiple times.
Man, I can't wait I want to focus on high country mule deer soon. Like, I feel like I'd love that, just the way you guys have described it. And I've never focused on them, so it's like,
yeah.
But it's because I always wanted to get the elk done first, and this year with Alaska. But now it's just like I really want to hunt mule deer.
What's your thoughts on it, Justin? You were on that Nevada hunt this year.
Yeah, we weren't actually that far away from each other,
right?
Same time too. Yeah, high country mule deer is a fun hunt. It's just kind of that first opening hunting season of the year, so it's your first go around, and you're up as high as you can get, literally sheep country. Those deer are up living in there, and yeah, our hunt in Nevada was it was slower, but we did see some really good bucks. We made play on a couple good bucks. We did a crazy amount of hiking, but that's all part of it. But
right,
yeah, no, it's a good time. I'd put a high country mule deer hunt, against anything else.
Yeah, I think you and I have talked about this before, Mason. But coming from Pennsylvania, where like we can't see 40 yards in our tree stands, and you just don't know like where the buck can be at. The fact that you can watch them through and know where they are, like that's
for miles. Yeah, literally.
That's pretty sweet too. And I kind of like that hunting elk in more open country too, to be able to spot them, and that spot and stalk aspect is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really interesting too, just to see how deer act when they're not being pressured. So here, if you see a deer, it's like you need to act on it right now usually. Where out there, it's like you can actually kind of see what deer do all the time.
Yeah. In our spot where we
learn a lot.
We actually waited almost 3 full days to make a stalk on a buck, just because it wasn't in the right spot. And the guys I was with were pretty knowledgeable of the area, and they were like, just sit back and keep watching him. He'll screw up eventually. And sure enough, he did. We went in. We got 25 yards from him, never got a shot, but got full draw. But it's a different style of hunting, like you said,
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And yeah, and just the fact, executing the shot and having all that happen the way that it is, like that's one of the most difficult things. It's really difficult to have opportunities, whether it's whitetail or mule deer or whatever. It's a whole nother thing being able to capitalize on it. And then I feel like I still struggle quite a bit with that aspect. And that's what separates the good hunters from the great ones, the ones that are able to capitalize on those moments. And I'm still working on it.
Yeah. And, going back to that stalk, just the whole Western aspect to it as well, where you're up in the mountains, you're trying to survive first, hunt second.
Yeah.
Lots of times. We had excellent weather on this hunt as far as surviving, so that wasn't as big of a deal. But on that stalk, I remember there was like a 50-yard stretch where I needed to be certain that my foot was planted before I took my next step, or else it would have been, you're going off this cliff and you're going to die.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that you factor all that in, it just makes for an amazing story and an amazing hunt that you're not going to forget.
Yeah, and you guys had, and you can kind of guess this the way we talked about, but you guys backpacked into this area.
Yeah.
And set up camp, and then you were glassing from your camp and stuff. So you didn't have to hike however many miles every morning. And, that's for I feel like for mule deer, that's definitely even more important than elk, I guess. I'm not obviously an expert elk hunter or anything, but I just feel like for mule deer, you really put yourself in a good place to be able to wake up and glass.
Yeah, we had an awesome campsite too, where we were on the side of a cliff, and basically we came out of our tent, walked 5 yards, and we were at our glassing spot.
Yep. Yeah,
we had pine trees there that kind of hit our tent. It was picture perfect.
Huh? Yeah, that's a pretty cool aspect to it, and just the whole western thing, like you said, like what about water? What was water like there?
There's a dry stream bed at the bottom of our drainage, and we didn't find water the whole way hiking up along this drainage. And we were talking to guys that have been hunting there for 30 years, and they've never found water in this drainage. And somehow my brother and I managed to find water. There's one hole that was about 10 or 15 feet long, where there's a little seep of water that came out of the ground, and then it went back underground. Really? And it was such a small seep, we could pump the water out of this little hole faster than it would seep in. And that's what we survived off of on that trip.
Wow. What would you have done if you didn't find water?
We would have had to pack out and pack additional water in probably every 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, that would have sucked.
And Tyler, my brother, he actually told one guy that's been hunting in there for a lot of years that there was water down there. And the guy was so happy that my brother told him where he could find water. He got out his Onyx and started sending. Actually, he grabbed my brother's phone and he started marking pins on his phone all over, like where he's killed bucks, where he should look for. Like,
really,
this is a bed where like 50% of the time you can go here, there's going to be a buck in this bed. And
really?
It's like he gave him that kind of information, and he was right too. One of the beds that he pinned on my brother's phone. He went there, and there was a buck in it, but it wasn't one he was willing to shoot in that spot. It was kind of one of those spots where it's like, if you're going to shoot something here, you better make sure it's going to be worth it. Yeah. And at that point, it wasn't that late in our hunt.
Yep.
But it's super cool that guy was so grateful that we told him where he could find water, that he was willing to just teach us 30 years of experience and information on that spot. Yeah. This kind of says a lot.
Yeah.
Which is very surprising too, because that area, every hunter we ran into was extremely nice and almost helpful, actually. And I can't say it's the same thing here.
No, it's definitely not.
No.
Well, you just sent me that picture of that guy flipping off your trail camera the other day.
Yeah.
Putting his face right up in your camera, like, know who I am. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trying to intimidate
and you hear stories like that every year. People are stealing tree stands. My brother had one or two tree stands stolen this year. A guy took my brother's camera off a tree here in Pennsylvania, set it on the ground, and put a tree stand up on the tree that his camera was on. That's like, this is public land, man.
Yeah, chill out.
Unreal.
Yeah, that is crazy. I guess he didn't take the camera, but still, it's like
still annoying.
Yeah, I noticed that out west. There's people are pretty friendly when it comes to hunting spots, I guess, but I don't know. Yeah, we can't even get out of our own family here, so yeah, that's funny. What are you thinking for next year, Mason? What are your goals?
I'm not sure yet. I figure we'll get through this hunting season here in Pennsylvania, and we'll have to sit down with the other guys and discuss what's gonna happen. I think we're getting to a point now where all of us have a decent amount of points in some states, and
yeah,
it might be time to cash in. It might be time to try something new.
Yeah, I think so too. It's pretty nice of my brother Kurt moving to Montana here last week, so
yeah,
that's
clutch.
Added to one of the home locations that we can go to and have him there. Send him out scouting.
It's plan. Call him to pack out.
Yeah, when he's like, running through the situation in my head, at least talking to me about like the decision to move there. It's like, yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, he could scout for me, like, no, but it's, yeah, I think next year is going to be fun. I think me, you, and Michael all have points in some places that we should be able to potentially draw some good tags.
Right.
At least on paper, it looks like we could.
Yeah, who knows with COVID, though, there might be a bunch more people trying to get their own food.
Yeah. Who knows? We'll see though. But anyways, I think that's about it for this one. Justin and I got some bucks to kill. Well, $1.
$1 to kill.
I only got one tag. I think this week will be pretty awesome. So I said this last week, and I'm going to say it again. Hopefully next time by listening to this podcast, got a buck down. Maybe even by the time this one releases.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I'll be on standby. Drag crew.
Mason's off all week because he's got vacation from work. And you think you're going to go try to hunt out of state in this week?
Yeah, I might try and get my deer meat cut up early in the week and head up there. Hopefully you tag out in Pennsylvania by then. We can head up together.
Head up to New York and see what happens.
Yeah, try something new.
Yeah, cool. All right, well, thanks again, Mason, for sharing the story. Justin, thanks again. We'll get to spend some more time together. Can't wait.
Yeah, the next 8 days, 8 days.
Yeah, sitting in the tree.
Yeah,
sitting in the
it'll
tree.
be fun.
So. All right, guys. Well, let's sign off here.
All right, thanks.
Yep.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit eastmeetswesthunt.com, Facebook at East Meets West Outdoors, and Instagram at East Meets West Hunt. If you enjoyed today's episode, please review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.